So hopefully I'm going to be loud enough. I was actually telling Dr. Bullard earlier, normally I do the opposite of this talk. Normally I'm in classrooms and at camps and at conventions talking to people about why they should go into science. I don't normally talk a lot about the TV side of what I do, but it's a different perspective, obviously, than most of the speakers you guys will probably have this semester. I know one of the coolest speakers that I remember from when I was a senior and sitting where you guys are was actually a gentleman that spent his time doing set design and prop design and now owns most of Raleigh, downtown at least. And so he kind of talked to us about how, you know, owning real estate in the bar industry is really just like making a really cool set that people want to hang out in and take photos in. So I am going to kind of do a talk that I don't normally do. So if anything doesn't seem clear, it's probably because it's my first try at this one, but we'll cover anything that you guys may have further questions on during the Q&A at the end. So this is also a new clicker. So one of the things I tell everyone when I meet them is that where your journey starts does not define where it ends. You do. So had you told me when I was this little kid hanging out in Jacksonville, North Carolina, born to two traditional Marines that were working from enlisted side up, that I would in any way be attached to Hollywood or would in any way be able to even live the life that I live right now, I would have told you that you were full of it. Because the truth is that I was sold a narrative as a child that I was not going to get to college, I was not going to get out of my hometown, and I surely was not going to make anything of myself. So I spent my life buying into that narrative until I finally had some educators that sat me down and talked to me about the fact that math and science could redefine that journey for me. So I was actually a sophomore in college before someone had that talk with me. I started out a history major, and I joked that I got really lost on the way to graduation. But it landed me here at NC State for a student day where basically our Associates in Science program was letting us see what it would be like to transfer to a university. I sat in a material science class, and for the first time in the classroom, felt challenged, felt engaged, and felt excited about what the future could hold. So from there, I realized that the greatest investment that I could make was actually in my education. When I came to school, I was living out of my car. I was lucky if I was eating one meal a day, but I was paying for my tuition and books, and I graduated debt-free because I sacrificed and I invested, and I realized that the days here are some of the greatest of our lives, but it's also going to lead to everything in the future. So when I talk to little kids, I tell them all the time, I get it. Everyone wants to party in college. Everyone wants to have a lot of fun. You're supposed to be around your friends and just enjoying it. But if you invest and you buckle down as you guys have and now become seniors and then graduate, you know that the party is coming. You guys are going to be making the highest that you can in a BS program when you get out into the world. Chemies, especially NC State chemies, are highly sought after. The program here teaches us to be multifaceted, it teaches us to work hard, and corporations know it. When I went to Novartis, 9/10 out of the startup engineers that were there that were new grads were NC State grads. We used to joke that it probably wasn't good for the company, but we were able to not only handle building the plant in Holly Springs, but getting the nation through the swine flu pandemic. So all of you are going to be able to really forge the path that you want because you've dedicated this time now and looked at it as an investment. Now, from there, though, I will say part of what's going to happen when you get out of school is you're suddenly going to have a lot of time on your hands. You're going to be working an 8 to 5. If you're in a startup, obviously a lot more hours. But that's going to give you time to suddenly figure out who you are if you haven't yet. So be prepared for that. Like, don't just throw yourself into the work and just avoid figuring out what you like, who you are outside of school, who you are outside of your family, outside of your parents' homes. Take that time to really develop yourself because there is truly only one you. And especially in the world of acting, that's the most vital thing that you can figure out is who you are because that's going to make you be set apart from everyone else around you. Now, this is actually the very first quote that I was ever quoted saying on a national level, which was weird, but it was actually, I was asked, you know, you're an engineer, why are you doing art? And the truth of the matter is They go hand in hand. Look at product development. Look at cosmetic engineers. Look at textile engineers that are in the fashion industry. If we're not able to take what we do in a very structured way and take the artistic approach and expand beyond it, we're not going to actually be developing cutting edge products. So when I made the shift, it was actually really simple. You know, I had acting and modeling as a hobby throughout college, and had been something that I had done for fun, and it was one of those things I was like, I never want to be a starving artist. And I also never want to be bored, because let's be honest, when someone's handing you a script that's completely written, it's pretty boring. So as a science communicator, I actually get to own what I say, and I get to design it myself, so I get to bring in both that science and that art. But even as an engineer doing product design and plant design, I was able to bring in that kind of creative side of things and really push the limits. I'm a little weird and I love bugs, so biomimicry is something that I looked at a lot in my engineering. I would look at different insects that were out there and figure out how do they move, how do they work? You know, basic hydraulic systems are spiders. You take a spider, you rip its leg off, it's gonna heal immediately. You start puncturing it, and just like any other hydraulic leak, it's going to fail completely. So when you start to need design elements that you don't think of, start looking around you. The curiosity is what makes us scientists, and then being able to take that curiosity and those observations and turn them into actual products is what makes us engineers. Now, the thing is that I got really far down the path of traditional engineering. My goal when I graduated was to hit the E-suite before I was 30, because I was told by all the female engineers that I knew that you have to climb hard, and you have to climb fast. Because when you get engaged, when you have a family, like it or not, everyone in the nation is fighting to change it, but it's still a very much traditional fact that it is harder to climb as a female. You are going to have to prove yourself. You're going to have to do twice the amount of work to get half the amount of credit. But if you do it and you do it well, you can advance, and you can advance quickly. At 28, I was reporting into the CEO, launching a global division out of Houston, and was looking at either moving to Houston to continue running that corporation once they flipped that company, or moving to New York to be the CEO of the next company they were going to flip. I realized in 2015 that I had spent every single job that I was in every company forming women in leadership programs, and it wasn't making a difference. Because the problem is it wasn't the women in the offices, it was the girls not coming in the doors. So in 2015, I took a moment, I really reflected on things. I knew I was getting enough wardrobe design and acting jobs in LA to be able to substantiate. I knew I had the experience in engineering to be able to consult. And I said, you know what? I want to spend my life doing outreach, because we need more kids to get excited about science. As a nation, we're falling behind, both with girls and boys in science. And I want to be out there talking to kids. I want to inspire them. I want the next generation to come in the door so that we're not having to have these discussions anymore. So I found that they were actually searching for Mythbusters. And I thought it was a joke. I was like, there's no way that this is real. But my dad's always said that the worst that they can say is no. And I said, you know, if this is real and I don't apply, I'm going to kick myself for the rest of my life. So at 28 and 2015, I decided to walk away and submit this application.
I'm Tamara Robertson. I am a chemical and biomolecular engineer.
Born tinkerer. Science communication is my life, and to have the chance to be a Mythbuster, it's amazing.
Welcome to Mythbusters.
3,
2,
1.
boom.
Now, if any of you watched Mythbusters The Search, it is on the Science Channel. I realize that it's not part of normal cable packages and no hotels have it. But if you were able to see it, you'll know that I not only was one of the finalists and the only 2 MVP winner, but I was also the only female to make it all the way to the end. We lost. We actually had 3 out of 10 that were females, which is better statistics than in most engineering firms. So we had us when we started, and I was very excited. I thought I might be the only girl when I got there. But we lost our first female episode 1, and we lost our second female episode 4 of 8. The day I got my MVP was the day that she went home. So it was one of those moments that while I was excited to finally see a woman get an MVP, It was not the way I would have seen it going. I would have preferred that she also stay and that we duke it out until the end. But it was not how the competition went, so I continued for the next 4 episodes as the only female builder. I was also the only female builder on Mythbusters Jr. this entire last summer, which is airing now, also on Science. And I was the only female host on Scijinks. Now, getting there, though, was just part of the battle. And a lot of these quotes that you'll see are not just lessons that I've applied while in television, but lessons that I've applied while in engineering. So Miss Frizzle taught us when we were little, right? Take chances, make mistakes, get messy. You're going to want to get your hands into everything. I know today's generations are all about observing life and watching it and seeing it on our computers, on our iPhones, on everything else. But if you don't actually get out there and start touching it and being a part of it, you're going to miss out on so much. Like being a startup engineer was one of the most exciting parts of my career because I was wearing 40 different hats and I got to see every single part of what happens from start to finish, groundbreaking to actual validation on a plant. When you get there, get on the floor, talk with your operators, talk with the people that have been there for years because they're the ones that are gonna make or break your career. I've seen a lot of engineers go out, first jobs, and be very dismissive of their manufacturing associates and their operations staff. And I will tell you, they will cripple you fast. You want to talk to the guys that have been doing it for 30 years. You want to learn from them. A lot of people think that they're above those people on the floor, but I can tell you right now, I graduated in 2009. A lot of my graduating class ended up being manufacturing associates because those were the jobs that were available for us. So humble yourself every day and get down on the floor and be with the people that are actually making or breaking your product, your plant, ultimately your job and career, because when they fail, it reflects on you. So definitely make sure you're enjoying it and getting out there and doing it. Now, the same happened with me on The Search because I couldn't just sit back and design it. I had to actually be there building every single thing. The Search, it's not, it wasn't well talked about, but on The Search, we were not allowed phones. We were not allowed computers. We did not get to call friends. We did not get to look up things. If you didn't have the knowledge in your head, you didn't have the knowledge on the floor for the build. We each got to bring one tool. When we came to the show, mine was a book that I had written down all of the information that I knew I needed. It's kind of like when you guys go in for your FE exam. I made sure I had everything I needed to be able to be on that floor because we were taught how to find the resources that we needed, not how to memorize them, right? So once I got there, it was all about proving who I was and forging that path. So it's going to be very similar for you guys as engineers when you start.
From day one, biomolecular engineer Tamara has shown construction expertise and science savvy.
Science.
A born tinkerer, she played a key role in some of the most successful builds in the series. And her elite project management grit and determination saw her take out 2 MVPs. First for Needle in a Haystack, and then the myth of the vacuum cleaner climber.
Thanks, Kyle.
You're welcome. Good work today.
When I started this journey, I was just really hoping to make the girls in science proud, and I'm definitely gonna carry this as a badge of honor this week, because I think I'm doing it. And it's funny because I believed those words fully in that moment, and since I have talked to so many parents about their sons and how their sons getting to see a woman on television holding her own with the men and showing that we are equals has actually been more impactful than for the little girls. Yes, the little girls are inspired, but it's the young boys that are actually having what they believe a girl can do versus a boy can do, get it turned on their heads. That has been very impactful, and it's what I get notes written about the most on social media. So now I just talk about inspiring kids instead of just little girls. So this is actually our very final episode, and this is a quote that when I said it, we were in August of the year before this aired, and we didn't find out until February live what the results were going to be. This is the end of the journey on The Search, but I'm really hopeful that this is just the beginning of my journey as a Mythbuster. So the one thing that I learned, obviously in February, was that they were going to stick with the trope of what a male in science looks like for television. So even as a 2 MVP winner and the only female finalist, I was not selected. But I didn't take that and just grin and bear it and go back to engineering. Instead, I decided that I was going to make my career what I wanted it to be. And so from there, I offered my skills to be able to come back in any way possible with the Mythbusters franchise. I said, look, I'm a product developer, and I'm a startup engineer. You guys need people that know how to build, and your producers don't know anything about science. So how can I help? And so I ended up getting contracted to actually do 2 episodes on 2.0 with Brian and John. From there, I actually ended up at San Diego Comic-Con to talk about superhero science. This is actually me doing that this past year in Durham. But while I was there, Adam Savage reached out to me. He let me know that he had written the network about the travesty that it was, that the only 2 MVP winner wasn't appointed, whether she was female or male. And he invited me to join Norm and walk the floor for Tested. It was one of those moments that Alan Pan, here with me, the tall one, he also lost on The Search, and he used to call us the Mythbusters losers. And I looked at him and I smiled and I said, if hanging out with Adam and Norm is losing, I'm okay with it. So from there, they offered me Scijinks, which we had air this past summer. And then now Mythbusters Jr, where I'm actually working day in and day out with Adam and 6 kids from across the nation. They are ages, Cannon started as 11 to 16. Cannon is 12 years old from Texas, and he is a sophomore in aerospace engineering. His brother, who we hired as a consultant, is 16 in his PhD in aerospace and mechanical dual majoring. So these kids make me feel like an idiot on a daily basis. They also remind me how short I am. But now, the one thing that happens when you're in television, and it's also something that happens in engineering, in all honesty, is you're going to get to moments where jobs are not going to be given to you. Or you're going to feel like this, I've been working towards this is what I deserve, why didn't I get it? Or you're going to finally realize that maybe you don't like the job you're in, and maybe you want to look at somewhere new. And it's in those moments that you should really start looking around you and start trying to figure out who you want to emulate. Like, you can actually design your own paths. Like, the corporate ladder no longer exists. It's the corporate lattice. There is such thing as just getting promoted in place and learning new skills, and that's just as good as being promoted to the next management level. Some people that are great with tools are not great with people, and if they try to push you into a people role when you know you really don't want to deal with people and you don't want to babysit, let them know that you're okay with being developed in place, because most of the time they feel like they might lose an engineer if they don't push them into management, and I've seen them lose more engineers by pushing them that way. I myself, again, at 28, was sitting, reporting into the CEO, and realized I miss getting my hands dirty. I miss playing with machinery. I miss tools. I went to engineering because I think a paper plant that's got a line that's bigger than a football field running at high speeds is freaking awesome. So I realized that I didn't need to be sitting there dealing with payroll and why someone needed to take a vacation and all of those other things that really aren't that exciting unless you're into that kind of thing. So definitely look at where you're trying to go and realize that at the end of the day, they can take your job, they can take your money, but they can never take your skills. So out of the shows that I've been on, Mythbusters 2.0 is not being renewed. It will not air again. Scijinks is not being renewed. It will not be aired again. Mythbusters Jr is running right now. We will find out within the next 2 months whether it will run again. So you always need to be ready to be bouncing and going and versatility moving to the next thing. So as Dr. Buller said, I'm a consulting engineer. Before I moved to California and took this leap, I made a list. What do I need to pay off? And what do I need to achieve before I'm willing to be maybe making no money? So for the last 3 years, full transparency, the maximum that I made was a teacher's salary on 3 nationally ran, globally ran, if you count Mythbusters shows. So I had to make the money work. I live in California. My mortgage on my 4-bedroom house here is only $1,200. My rent in California for a studio is $1,500 minimum. They're going to be up to $1,800 by the end of this summer. So you have to make the money work. Don't ever work to survive. You guys are going to come out of school, and again, chemies are the highest paying BS that exists. Continue living like a college kid for a little while. That's what I did. I didn't change up my lifestyle and start living beyond my means or in the means that I suddenly was making. I banked it all. I mean, after all, I went from living in a car to being able to actually own a house. So you want to make sure that you are prepared for whatever comes. Invest in your future. 401ks and IRAs are vital. You guys have the one benefit that most people don't. You have time. Start investing right away. Almost all companies do matching. You want them to match. You want to be able to put that away because then you can retire sooner. You're not going to notice the money being gone now because, again, you're moving from college living to engineer living. Max it out and give as much money as you can to your future self because it's a lot harder to do when you suddenly get laid off or you suddenly realize that the manager that you're working under is one of the worst people you've ever met in your life and you want out. It happens. I know a lot of great people that have left jobs because of the person that got put over them. So if you have the money, you make the choices. I've never had to take a role that I felt compromised my morality. I've never had to take a role that compromised my intelligence. I have never taken my ethics ring off. I tell producers all the time, I'm like full transparency, I'm divorced now, but when I had a wedding ring on, they'd say, does the ring come off? And I'd hold up my wedding ring and I'd say, this one does, and I'd hold up my ethics and said, this one never will. It doesn't matter what you do if you have the money to back your own decisions. You can actually have a lot more control over your life. So I would just say, invest in you, continue investing in you when you get out there. Because again, you're not gonna notice that you suddenly aren't living in a big house right now. You guys are going from either college dorms or college apartments. You know, just keep doing that for at least the first 2 years. You'd be amazed how much money you can bank and save. And one of the things that most people in this nation complain about is that they don't have a single dime saved. So don't be that person. Now, one reason that I am standing here today and was able to get to where I am is because I believe very strongly in mentors. They used to have an apprenticeship program for engineers, for designers, for builders, where you would work with someone that was much more advanced. Nowadays, they call it a mentorship program. Try to find immediately not just a stepwise mentor, someone that's in the job that you want to be or is walking down the path that you think you want to forge as well, but also find a mentee, pass on the knowledge, pass on the skills of like how to navigate, lift someone else up that's been left behind by the society, and find peer mentors. I have learned so much more by having peers surround me that actually push me to go further, that help me raise my own bar, than I've ever learned from a stepwise mentor. And it's because they help to motivate you. You know, when my friends and I hang out, they start talking about what they've done, and I feel like I'm the one failing. Like, I'm like, how are you guys doing all of this stuff when I can't even like find the time to get to that? What are you doing? I talk to my engineering friends. A lot of the graduates that I spent my years here with helped me get to the e-board at 28. When I got into business development and then at Milliken and I had to start selling plastic additives, I called my friend that was working at P&G. I called my friend that was working at Nestle. I called my friend that was working at Scijinks and I said, hey, I got this huge goal of a ton of additive to sell and you guys have a lot of products. I think this would help. Can you get me in the door? So look around this classroom because the people in here are the people that you're going to continue to count on when you leave. Like, give back to your university. I make it so that everyone, everywhere I go, knows about NC State. You know, everyone on the show knew that I was an NC State engineer. Every person I do relief work with knows how amazing NC State is. Like, these people that have helped you get to where you are and that are going to help you walk across that stage, they're the ones that matter the most. You know, like, your career is great. Your job is great. But at the end of the day, when you're sick, when you're failing, the people that are around you are the people that are going to lift you back up. So you want to make sure to always nurture those relationships and keep people around you that help you set your bar higher. You know, I strive to never be the smartest person in the room because then I'm not learning, and learning is living. So if you can have people around you that really help motivate you and then people around you that really help support you, it's going to go much further than just having a cushy job and working all the time. So to that point, always give back, always do outreach. You guys are about to be working for companies that actually have outreach programs. ExxonMobil, for instance, has a program where there's this kit. It's in like an OtterBox. You check it out for the day. You roll it into a classroom. They give you a YouTube video on how to actually teach with everything that's in that kit to kids from 8 to 18. You sit there with them for the day. You spending one day with that classroom, they automatically get a $500 endowment from Exxon. You did nothing but give time. Most companies have a program like that. They're going to match the donations that you give to organizations. They're going to have some form of STEM involvement. Get the message out to the communities around you. I'm one person. I spend 90% of my time on the road in outreach. I only film 3 months out of the year, and every day outside of that, from March to November, I'm in classrooms, I'm at camps, I am on the ground, but I'm one person. So if we could mobilize every graduate to start giving back, we could really start making an impact. Not just for like actually elevating the kids, but also elevating the university. NC State's done a lot for all of us. So let's do something to give back to them.
Tamara Robertson is a biochemical engineer with a passion for STEM education. She works to elevate everyday science to superhero status as a means to connect with kids across the country. Her outreach efforts include camps, talks, fairs, and panels that are centered around superhero science, women in STEM, and diversity and inclusion. Tamara can also be seen on the new Science Channel series, Scijinks.
Obviously, it hadn't been announced yet. I don't think they've announced it yet, actually, that it's not coming back, but you guys know now. You can still find it on Amazon. You can find it on Science Go, but Johnny got a little busy with the new relaunch of the Connors. So, as you can see, this is me in Puerto Rico doing relief work last January. All the kids are doing Wolfpack signals. This is me with Engineers Without Borders down in Bolivia. I make everyone know about NC State. It's like, literally, they just have to know. It's the best school ever, right? So the big thing, though, and I love this quote because I'm just actually going to read it because it's just beautiful. It says, always remember you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. In 2015, I looked at television, and there wasn't really any women left. Carrie Byron had been on there, but she was an artist that did science work. She was amazing. She inspired me to take the path I took. But once she came off of the show, there really were no women on Discovery and on science. I would never have thought in 2018 that I would be standing here as one of the very first women to host a show on Discovery as a lead. And so if you don't see that person out in the world that you think will inspire, or you didn't have that person in the world growing up that inspired you, you can be that person. It doesn't take a lot of time, and you guys already have the knowledge. Just go out and share it with the rest of the world. Now, focus on learning and succeeding instead of pretending that you understand something when you don't. Just raise your hand and ask a question. Like my dad said, the worst they can say is no. When you are in your career, do not look at your phone. Do not look at your phone. Do not look at your phone. When your manager is talking, even if they're not talking to you, listen. You can learn so much by becoming a people watcher, an observer, and a listener in your career. Because people talk about things that they don't even acknowledge who's around them when they're doing it. I learned more listening to people that were not directly talking to me than I ever learned from my managers in my engineering career. And it made it so that I became invaluable in meetings because I had a knowledge that was cross-functional and that was groomed beyond what they were actually giving to me. So listen and ask questions. Again, if you make sure that you're not the smartest person in the room, you should not know everything that's being discussed. So this is going to help you get beyond everyone else because right now, I cannot walk into a room without people being on their phones. I can't walk into a room with people that are generations beyond me that are not on their phones because they're a little bit distracted. So you need to, in meetings, always pay attention. Obviously, in classrooms, you guys are actually really engaged, which is amazing. And it's one of those things that it will definitely benefit you. I know a lot of times you're like, oh, but I could be doing this, or I could be checking this, or I could be going this way. And believe me, I'm pulled a million different ways at any given time. But that face-to-face time, that listening time, is what's going to really pay off for you in your career. So that being said, does anyone have questions? Yes?
I mean, being a fan of Mythbusters, you've obviously worked with amazing people with very high intellectual abilities. And you've mentioned a couple of kids who are just doing incredible stuff. How do you deal with, being intimidated, walking into a room with all these people, out?
I think actually, it's a great question. I think actually, I'm not quick to be intimidated because I come in humbly. Like, I absolutely am an observer of life. I want to learn what you know. I want to learn where you've come from. I want to know your story. And so part of that is being open to hearing everything that might be said. Now, there is a lot of worry, though, on the search, for instance. I mean, we were 10 people picked out of over 10,000 applicants to try to take that job. That application process took over a year to finalize. From the day that we got the first call saying you're in the running to the day that we actually hit set, and we were like, Ashton's going to show up and tell us this is not real, right? Every day on that set was intimidating because no one around me wanted to help me because they were all competitive. So in those instances, it does become kind of nerve-wracking. But I've found that as long as I'm honest about my limitations, and I say, look, that's great, and I would love to learn that with you, but I don't know how to do that. So our 16-year-old Valerie from California wanted to build a Jenga apparatus to take the bottom block out of the stack. She wanted to use pneumatic valves. So day one, I was handed a design that she had made, and they said, build this. And I said, that's great. I'm a chemical and biomolecular engineer, and I have not worked with pneumatic valves before that are like this. Give me a control panel that's already hooked up to, we're good. If not, let me have some time with the internet. And that is the thing. Like, I feel like there's nothing now in the age of the internet that we can't learn. You know, that is one thing that we learned so well in this program is how to find that knowledge if we don't have it, how to call people that have that knowledge, how to find it in resources and books. So I think knowing that that network exists made me feel empowered. And also, no one on the show doesn't call someone else. Adam has his entire crew of people that he calls and picks their brain. Like when he was building his astronaut suit for Comic-Con, he was calling NASA and being like, hey, what was in this pocket? Where was this thing at? Why was this thing there? You know, they're calling to get technical advice, just like we have to call to get technical advice. And especially when starting out, people love to teach. Like, it's actually psychologically proven that people's definition of how happy an interaction was is based on how much they got to talk, not how much you got to talk. So if you let them talk, they will teach you anything. And if you always come to people not with a problem, but as a, hey, I need advice on this thing, people open doors and take the time, especially as young engineers, because they know that how well you do is going to make or break how well they do as a company. Okay. Questions? Yes.
It seems like you've had a lot of kind of ups and downs. So just out of curiosity, when you're leading a satisfying life, do you think your satisfaction is bound in success in achieving goals or in understanding that you can be faced with a challenge and that out of that challenge you're going to be able to come out of it a better person and grow and learn more?
Wow. Did you write that down first? That was really good. That was a great question. So my life especially has a lot of ups and downs. And actually, I was talking to Dr. Bullard about this. It's only up until the last 3 months that I started sharing my full story. We always want to present the best self. You know, don't ever judge yourself by social media. It's everyone's highlight reel. You know, we know all this, right? For me, I set goals. And I usually set firm goals, but I remain very flexible in the approach so that I don't ever feel like I'm failing along the way. My dad used to say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So I set a big goal, and then I break it down. It's the same thing that you guys are going to be doing when you do project management or when you're doing any form of plant or product design. You're going to set the big goal, and then you're going to break it down. So I try to celebrate the small milestones. You know, even if I only got in the room for the audition and I never heard back, I celebrate that I got in the room. And did I win the room? Did I not win the room? Did I give all of myself in there? The world of acting is a very fickle, angry world. You get turned down and rejected at least 100 times a week, and that's just the ones you know about. The other ones that see your portfolio that your manager, agent never tell you about, you don't know. You know, so you get kind of used to not letting the job and where you could go define you, and you start to find your own voice, which is why it is so important to truly know who you are, because in those hard moments, it's looking back and saying, you know what, that's okay, because that's not what defines me. I define me. And then having that peer group to be like, can we go for a drink because I just had a really bad day? it's a strength that helps you get through the hard moments. So I think it's just figuring out how to recenter yourself. There are going to be highs, there are going to be lows, but if you can also become an observer of your own emotions, they stop ruling who you are as a person. Go ahead. No? Oh, okay. I didn't know you two were. No, yeah, I'm good. Yes.
I was just wondering, sometimes, especially for kids getting out of college, sometimes they go kind of, I just want a job and then I'm good and I just want to live my life.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I feel like it's a lack, there's an overall lack of goals past living.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a suggestion you have for, to fix that or to kind of get out of this mindset where it's as long as I am surviving,
Yeah, so there's actually a really great quote that says that surviving is not living, right? So you want to actually look at where you want to get. So for me, I knew I wanted to help kids. That's really been my ultimate goal overall. I wanted to give back like people gave to me to enable for me to get ahead. I wanted little kids everywhere to know that what they're born into doesn't define where they get. So that was kind of my big goal in life, but how I got there again, I was kind of set an approach. So for me, it became, okay, what does it take to get to a point where I can do outreach full time? So I got in my mind how much money I wanted in the bank saved, whether or not I was comfortable being in a renting situation or an owning situation. And I started kind of setting life goals based on that. Because I will admit, when I hit 28 and I suddenly had the goal that I left college with of hitting these, for a while I fumbled. I was like, what do I do now? What's next? And of course your families are always like, get married, have kids. No, let's figure out what's really next, once you know what you want, you're able to kind of more delicately navigate that. But I would say, obviously invest as much as you can as far as 401ks, IRAs. If you do stock market, that's cool. I don't do stock market because I don't get it. And I like to hold my money. But so look at how you want to invest. Always try to keep different investments. Don't put it all into housing or all into the stock market or all into 401ks and IRAs. And kind of just figure out what makes you happy. So again, I knew acting was a hobby that I would like to eventually get to a point where it was a career. So I also didn't want to be a starving artist. So I acted as a hobby until I got so busy that I couldn't keep doing it. Even though I was working from home, launching a global division, I realized I was spending a lot more of my time working from home on acting than I was on my engineering. So I was a little bit honest about, okay, this might be a good time to step away when they're offering these opportunities. So if you just kind of break that down, what is my hobbies? What do I like? What do I want to achieve there? You'll have goals that go there. You'll have goals that go along with the whole family, future generation kind of side of things. And then you'll have your career goals. And the more you can reflect and really know who you are, the better defined those are going to be, because they are really different for each person. So like I said, for me it was, I want to be a female host on a kid's show. I want to be able to have this much in the bank, and that I want to have this much time with my family each year. So it might be different for you, Okay. Yes?
Is something you can just tell us a little bit about a particularly interesting or challenging build that you did?
For engineering or Mythbusters? For Mythbusters. So you guys might have seen, I got to scale a 7-story building, which was epically awesome because I'm a climber. So that's something that I've always wanted to do, but obviously you get arrested if you do that in real life. So when they're like, we're going to give you a vacuum and you have to figure out how to build a rig to climb, I was like, that's going to be great. At this point, we're down to only, I think we had 5 of us left. No, we had 6 because Hackett was still there. We had 6 of us left, so we're 3-member teams. But it doesn't matter if you're in a team at this point because it's your body weight and it's only you that can get you to the top of the mountain, right? So in designing it and building it, I was 1/3 of the weight of one of my teammates and 1/2 of the weight of the other. So I had to build my own rig. And I, of course, looked at geckos because of biomimicry on how I wanted to design my paths. But then when we got there, even though I knew the calculations worked, I knew that the science was going to get me up the wall, it turned out that 7-story building was used as a fire brigade test tower and was coated in silt. So every time you would sit to try to actually get suction, it would start sliding. And so I started to try to get up this building, and every time I would hit would have seconds to move and to get up there. And I'm the only one that did it. It took me 2.36 minutes, something like that, to get up the building. And I got yelled at because I did not look around because I eye on the prize and got up there and did not enjoy the journey at all. So enjoy the journey, kids. But it was a really, really hard build for me because I had only ever done like electrical work in housing. So I had no idea how to wire up these lithium-ion batteries and series or parallel. I still, to this day, don't remember which one I did. I researched it and then did it, and then I forgot it. That's how engineering works, right? So I literally had to do all the electrical work for this pack, and I am very happy to admit that I took a knee twice because it turns out you should not do electrical work on a metal table. And I definitely electrocuted myself more times than I should have. So it was one of those moments where, again, we didn't have the ability to use the internet. We couldn't phone a friend. I literally, luckily had WikiHow'd to do electrical work, and it was in my book. Had it not been, which was not helpful because it turns out I really did not draw that diagram well. But it was one of those moments that I was like, I have no other resource, and this thing has to get me up a 7-story building. And if it fails, it's going to be pretty epic in the way that it's going to fail. So probably my favorite build and my most challenging. Yes?
So apart from that book and everything else, how did you gain the build experience coming from chemi and artists and all those other sorts of things?
Great question. I actually grew up a tinkerer. So I tell people that I had to grow up a closeted builder because I grew up in the deep south. But my dad is Marine, so I spent my entire childhood when he wasn't on deployments doing odd jobs with him. We were flipping houses before flipping houses were a thing, rebuilding engines. It literally started my life in an engine, I feel like. I was set because our very first challenge on the show was to launch someone out of a car. And I had rebuilt an LT1 Corvette engine and dropped it in a Trans Am and been tricking that car out since I was 14. So when they pulled in some Trans Ams, I was like, oh yeah, I'm good. We're good, we'll do this. But it was a lot of that practical application. So again, some of that you're not gonna get on the job. Some engineering jobs are very clean. Biotech, for instance, once we closed in the walls, we were in bunny suits every day. So it's something that I started to continue to build up on the side. A bunch of us used to get together and brew beer and distill other spirits, and so we would build our own system. When you're in biotech, you can get a hold of that kind of stuff. So it's something that we were learning to tinker on the side. So the more hands-on you are, even outside of work, the better those skills get. Yes?
So how would you suggest, so starting a startup, like you said, the hours just aren't that good. How were you able to balance that and finding acting jobs?
So when I was in the startup mode, I didn't really have time to do a lot of acting jobs because I was working 90-hour work weeks. It was kind of intense. I mean, because we came in groundbreaking during a pandemic season. So basically, I had been lucky enough that I had started my acting stuff while I was in college. So I had a portfolio. I had done a bunch of student projects for free. So I had kind of a reel built. And so I submitted those to some of the local agencies. So it went from me having to apply on websites to them doing it for me. And then what I did when I first negotiated my contract in was I talked to them about vacation days, and then I let them know, this is something I do as a hobby. I may be taking days that aren't actually for vacation to go and shoot commercials. Is that a problem? What are the rules? So, for instance, on The Search, Tracy Finara works for Moat Laboratories, and she has Moat Laboratories on the bottom of hers. Novartis made it very clear, never use our name in anything that you do. And it's just because most firms want to control their own PR and publicity. So, I just kind of talked to them about that, and then when things would come in, I would take days off. I did a Citibank commercial for the Olympics that ran for 18 weeks during my time at Novartis. And it involved me driving really far on a Thursday and taking 2 days of vacation days. So if you can find someone else to do your submitting for you, that's the best way to do it. Because it does get really hard if you're trying to balance actually putting out submissions. Because, it's a shotgun approach. You send out 100 submissions a day. Maybe once a week you might get one call you back. So getting an agent helps a lot. And the best way to do that is to, again, get a portfolio of headshots. Friends with good cameras. Cameras on phones nowadays are really great. and then shoot a lot of either student videos, write your own scripts, just get footage of you acting, build a reel, and then those two things are all it takes to start submitting to agencies. And then they'll use those to get you work. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you pinpoint a point or an event in your career that you shifted from a traditional Kenny job into show business?
I would say it was probably 2015, like when I actually fully realized I could make enough to pay the bills that I had as long as I continued living like a college student in LA, which, by the way, as two engineers, we were having to do because it's so expensive out there. It's one of those things that I kind of, at that point, was like, I'm busy enough now that I can actually be in showbiz. And it's actually really funny, though, because it was that year, too, that I went union. And I had been doing all these acting classes, and I kept applying to be a scientist and kept being told I didn't look like one. I wasn't allowed to be a scientist or an engineer on television because I'm not what they look like in any form. And so I literally, the first thing I did as an engineer was get LASIK. The first thing I did as an actor is I went and bought glasses. And I started applying for these jobs. And it was in 2015 that I learned that scientists on television are not in scripted television. It's actually considered reality TV. And I'm like, I'm not a Kardashian. That doesn't make sense. Like, this is actually like educational television. But it's reality TV. And so it was at that point in my career where I started on the right path to where I wanted to get. Before that, it was just a hobby, like I said. A little bit of fun on the side. Go ahead.
How did you decide what you were willing to compromise or sacrifice on to kind of keep your career going forward?
So for me, I've known all along that my end game is a kids show. So you get very specific in the types of roles and the types of things that you can do and be able to work with children. So it was one of those things that's been my guide all along. There's also, the problem with reality television is that at the end of the day, you go home and you're still the you that they showed on TV. It's a lot easier when you're scripted and you get to be a character and you can be vile and you can be whatever you need to be and you can wash it off at the end of the day and go back to being you and no one judges you for it. So when I was on The Search, there was a moment where we were building cardboard boats, and I hate contact cement to this day because of them. We were building these boats. We had been working 6 days straight on them for over 14 hours, and we had to get them in the water the next day. And the director said, I want you to say, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I thought that this would be easy. And I looked at him and I said, I'm a startup engineer. I consult for a large amount of money doing product and plant designs for the vaccines world. I will never say that building a cardboard boat is the hardest thing I've ever done. And it was because I was okay if they sent me home, because I wasn't there to get on television. I was there to expand my platform and to get in more classrooms. And so knowing who you are and what your actual goal is really helps you to know, okay, this is that line. I'm not going beyond it. Any other questions? These are good questions. No? Oh, hi.
At the end of the day, if you could give yourself like an earlier version of yourself at any point in your life, one piece of advice, what would that be?
Stop hiding.
Stop hiding.
I did not stop hiding until probably 3 months ago. I spent my entire life ashamed of growing up in a poor family, of not having options, of being the kid that was always wearing boys' hand-me-downs, of being a builder in, a very feminine environment in the South. And I spent my entire life hiding from that. And I really wish that I could get back the last 30 years, because I think where I would have gotten would have been so much further had I not been afraid.
So you mean stop hiding as
Who I am. And decide, be okay with who I am, accept it, and put it out there for the world. Go ahead.
What skills that you picked up in acting and improv carried over really well to your traditional engineering experience?
Ooh, public speaking, actually. So I can stand and defend my work to no end, because I have no problem letting people know exactly what I've done and where I've done it. And it's also been something that's really helped me in networking. So networking is so vital. I know as engineers, the old joke is that the introverted engineer stares at his own shoes, the extroverted stares at the other guy's shoes. You got to get a little bit past that if you want to get out there, because there's going to be points where even if it's just in a room with a CEO or a boss, you're going to have to defend your work. You're going to have to talk through it. You're going to have to be on project teams with people that you may not like, that you don't understand. So being able to communicate well and effectively, and then just not being afraid to like look like an idiot. You know, I mean, you do improv long enough, you always look like an idiot. So being able to like actually just embrace that and be like, this is part of the journey. Has really helped me in engineering. So as you go, I mean, especially if you end up in a business development management side, you're going to be having conversations with people from the manufacturing floor all the way up to the C-suite. So you want to be able to talk with everyone. Yes.
Going from like giving reports to like executives and stuff like that to like acting and stuff like that, and not only do you have to have a discrete goal that you're going towards, you have to like completely rebrand yourself and kind of resell yourself to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how do you like go about doing that? Just completely changing your whole direction and you yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. I call it the chameleon effect. You can blend. I can blend in any room. It's what made me a good actor. It's what made me really good at business development. But it's also kind of what made me lose who I truly was. So it's something that you should do within reason, like keep who you are in those moments. But the big thing that I do is I just realize that every single person puts their pants on the same way, 1 foot at a time, right? Like I don't treat anyone differently. It doesn't matter what level they're at. And so it enables me to really just have those discussions in a very open and genuine way. The other thing too is I recognize again that I need to be not just saying what I'm delivering, but what they need. So I tend to, especially going into business development meetings or into project meetings, I think about what I'm about to pitch from their perspective. And I think about what problems they're having. So I never like went to Nestle and said, I have this great product that makes things clear. I said, hey, you've got these great products, but no one's actually able to see them on the store shelves because you guys have them in opaque containers. Wouldn't you like to show them what you're actually offering? You know, and you talk to them about how you can help achieve their goals instead of being like, I need. It's you need, and I could potentially help. Any other questions? Well, I will leave you. Oh, yeah, no, go.
Could you talk a little bit about kind of your superhero science and some of the popcorn presentation?
Yeah, it's normally that's all I talk about. So superhero science is 9 months out of my year. I go across the nation to all the cons. I'm at San Diego Comic-Con. I'm at New York Comic-Con, at Stanley's Comic-Con, WonderCon. I'll be at North Carolina, potentially at both cons this year in March and in November. I'm basically everywhere. And what I do is I utilize superheroes to teach science. When I do it with kids, it's usually in demo form. So like I taught them about venom by making magnetic slime and kind of explaining how a symbiote can wrap around things. But then I actually did the science of venom at North Carolina Comic-Con, and we actually talked about viruses and what it would take to make a real-life venom today. And so when we do that, I usually will bring in specialists within the field. So NC State's been really amazing at giving me professors that specialize in those backgrounds to come and talk to it. I'm also launching a STEM-based comic in March. I think this is the first place that's publicly heard that. So what we're doing in that is we're tackling real-world problems. And we have a living scientist in every issue that comes along with us for the journey. And each issue has a less than $5 DIY at-home experiment that kids can do. Because comics and superheroes are something that is tangible, it's approachable. You can get a comic for free, you can get them for 99 cents. Kids already see that they're diverse, they're inclusive, they're taught that one person can make a difference. And science has been inspiring sci-fi tech, and sci-fi has been inspiring science, technology development for eons, so why not actually combine them? So superhero science is kind of my life. And now I'm actually partnering with a nonprofit out of Oregon where we help young children that are in wheelchairs become the superheroes that they know they are already inside. So for cons, we marry up builders, tech schools, maker spaces, and they volunteer their time. The materials are covered by Stan Winston School, and we turn them into heroes via magic wheelchairs. So. Any other? Yes.
Sort of the last question. Since we're in senior design right now, do you talk more about your experience here at the stake with your senior design team and what you gained from that with, launch your career later on?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had the pleasure of designing Novartis's downstream process for my senior design. So my friend Nikki at the time was actually an intern there. And so they were like, well, can you get us some free help? And she's like, sure, we'll do a senior design around this build. So our team got to design it and work with looking at both basically reusable versus disposable reactor systems and kind of do the number crunching on what was going to be the most cost effective, knowing at the time they wanted to get to I think it was a penny vial. So we were seeing how much we could lean out and make efficient their process because they were transferring it at the time from Germany. So we knew what it looked like there, and we're like, okay, how do we streamline this? How do we cut out fixed costs? How do we make this so that they can actually run it nonstop and keep down liability? And so at the time, again, graduating in 2009 was not a great time to be graduating. So I actually had a job offer from Albemarle Corporation, who we drove by on the road trip here, and it's amazing and great. But they were going through some layoffs at the time. And so I went into Novartis and said, if you'd like to keep me, I'd be happy to stay. And luckily they did want to keep me. And so my senior design actually led to my very first job. Any other questions? No? Well, with that, I'll leave you that. Yes?
I was curious, how do you see and define the difference between science and engineering, and how does that affect how you portray them in the media?
I love that, because I don't know if you guys noticed, but in every single one of those videos, they said my degree wrong. It's like the most annoying thing. It's like Johnny, like he tried to say it, couldn't even say. He's like, can I call you something else? I was like, no, that's what I am. You have to say that word. So it's really funny because people are like, oh, you're a scientist. I'm like, no, I'm an engineer. They're like, no, oh, okay, so you're a maker. And I'm like, no, I'm an engineer. Like there's a step in between. But I still talk about STEM or STEAM in general because I think, if you can't have engineering without mathematics, you can't have engineering without science. Definitely can't have it without technology. So it's one of those things that I kind of help them understand, like engineering is its own thing. And I also talk to kids a lot about if they are coming from a background where they're having to self-fund or they're having to raise funds to be able to go to school. I talk to them about how engineering, specifically chemical engineering, is one of the most flexible degree programs that they can get into. So if they don't know what they want to be when they grow up, they could go into chemical engineering. I mean, I've done green science, I've done plastic additives, I've done vaccines, I've done traditional chemical. I'm now building bombs sometimes. So it's one of those things that I talk to them about how they could go into engineering and have that flexibility, but that they have to still learn science. And then the other big thing I do is actually trying to teach people that science isn't just what you do in a classroom or in a lab. It's kind of the minute that you're like, hey, what is that? And how was that made? And you just keeping that curiosity and talking to them about like making sure that they don't hinder the asking of questions and the curiosity that kids naturally have. But I think engineering, it's hard. Like most people equate it to making. They're like, oh, you're just a maker. I'm like, sure, okay. If a maker makes vaccines, yes, okay, I'm a maker. So it's kind of a little bit mind-blowing, but a lot of it I just Mickey Mouse down to try to get that person to connect to it somehow. So I'll be like, that product that you're in, like 99% of that was designed in a way that you don't even see. And then kind of talking with them about, like, this is the science that led to the tech design, that is the engineering that led to the product. So it's an evolving process, I guess. Yes?
I was kind of curious maybe, so like my little brother's not really sure, he's kind of more unsure of what engineering he wants to get into, but let's say other people, they're unsure whether you want to be an engineer, and if you're, let's say, teaching young people, what do you maybe use as kind of like, litmus tests or just good things to say, hey, if you like doing this, you might actually like being an engineer.
Yeah.
I know it's most likely tinker.
Yeah, so I think I have a lot of parents actually that are like, my kids don't like science, they like football, and I'm like, well, you haven't connected football to science for them, so maybe actually take some time to talk about perf. So it's one of those things. They expect that the teachers do everything. They gotta do a little bit more. But when it comes to if they know they like to tinker and they know they like to build, I tell them, you can spend the first 2 years getting all your base curriculum before you actually have to decide, so it gives you some time. And I say if you get to that point and you still don't know, doing something like mechanical, electrical, or chemical engineering is going to give you flexibility. I was like, if you go to aerospace, you're going to be stuck. It's privatized now. It's hard. You may end up just in mechanical anyways, whereas mechanical, chemical, electrical, all can go to aerospace. And so I kind of talk to them about the different fields of engineering and like deciding, do you want to hone one skill or do you want to be a multifaceted? Like for me, I knew I always wanted to have the ability to kind of go anywhere. So I never became a specialist in any one part of engineering. So I would say also like talking to him about what other hobbies he has and seeing if any of those connect, like my niece loves to make lip gloss and slime. So I'm like, you could be a cosmetics engineer, so it's just connecting what he already likes with where he could go and actually make money with it. Other questions? Any others? Well, yes. No, I love this.
Do you have any advice for people who might be a bit more introverted or might not be comfortable kind of like being out there and like expressing their opinions about things so readily?
Yeah, I actually, when I first started out in engineering, when I would be in large meetings, I would sit on the wall. I wouldn't say anything in meetings, and I had a manager that afterwards I'd always go up to and I'd be like, we should have done this or we could have done this. And he's like, why don't you say it in the room? And I'm like, no, because like everyone was above me and I didn't want to speak out and maybe sound stupid. But it's one of those things that if you can at least have someone that you can talk to, so he and I set up a way for me to be able to now, instead of sitting on the wall, sit at the table and I would write things down and pass them to him. And if he thought it was a good idea, he would give me a thumbs up and then I would actually voice it. So take baby steps. Know who you are. I mean, to be honest, people that, may, a lot of the times when we're more introverted and we're shyer, it's because we're critical thinking in our heads, right? We're basically finding every reason that what we're about to say could be wrong, or every reason that what we just said was wrong. And I do that just as much as anyone else, but he really helped me to overcome that. So it's something that you can kind of talk with your project team, and if it's not something that your manager is open to, because sometimes managers aren't great, you can also talk to, again, a peer mentor. And then what we did too, we had a really good peer mentor group where it was again, because most of us were from states, so we knew each other, we would kind of cold run our presentations with each other. So that it became more, more refined, because practice makes permanent. Never perfect, because you're always going to have to weave with it, but it at least gives you a little bit more confidence that it's not the first time you're saying it. Anyone else? Yes.
Did you ever feel pressure from your family, with the chemistry degree, to make a lot of money? And how did you deal with that?
Yeah, my sister-in-law is a really high up at Exxon, so I got a lot of pressure to go into oil when I got out, and to make a lot of money, and was reminded constantly of how much I could make if I went into oil. And biotech, I'm sure, is chemi, as you guys have looked at the field, biotech is one of the lowest ends that you'll make with chemi, but it's still better than any other BS. So it was one of those things that she really started harping on me about how much more I could make with the same exact experience level and degree. And it was from a good place. She just wanted me to be fulfilled in life and be able to take care of myself. But it was one of those things I kind of just talked to her about how I felt about those fields and what I wanted to do. And at the time, I really wanted to stay here because my agent was here, and I was looking at housing, and all my friends were here already. And so within time, she saw a reason. But the bigger thing to acknowledge is that most of the time when our family or our friends are trying to push us a certain way, recognizing that it's always out of love. People only know the path that they walked, or maybe if they have close friends, they'll have some experience with that path. But parents especially just want to protect us and be able to help us and help us grow and help us be more. And so if we go a path they haven't gone, it becomes scary for them. And so as we recognize that it's from a place of love, it makes it a little bit easier for us to not lashback, but instead actually have a discussion and really talk through with them, like, and sometimes acknowledging first, like, I know that this is coming from a place of love and that you want to be able to guide me, but I really think, like, this is okay. And for me, it was also pointing out that I had mentors in the other fields, because she had mentored me all through college and helped me pick classes and everything. So it was going to be the first time in my career where she wasn't going to be able to help me if I went to another thing. She wasn't going to be able to teach me how to get to that next bigger job and everything. So when I acknowledged that I understood that she had helped me a lot and that she loved me, it helped kind of diffuse her as well. I don't know, does that help? Okay. Yes?
So like, after you graduated, you're kind of on the hunt for, let's say, your first job to get into. What are some of the things that you were looking for in the job, or maybe just advice for a lot of us are still looking for that first one to get into? There's a lot of different options, different places to live, totally different types of jobs. How do you kind of like figure out what's a good start? You might be afraid of making a wrong choice or something in a first job. So
it's a great question, and especially like when you're coming out of the pretense that most of our parents were in that line of sight where it was like you have the same job and you work that job your entire life no matter how unhappy you are. Our generation, we move jobs a lot. Like honestly, within the first 10 years, most engineers that are coming out now in school change jobs a couple of times. So one, like, don't be afraid, because you can always leave. You can always change your mind, especially if you're smart about your money. But I looked at location. I knew that I wanted somewhere that had, culture. I wanted to be able to go out. I have a dog that I have to walk at 2 a.m., so I didn't want to end up somewhere that I might be scared to do that. I looked at benefits. Benefits are really important, and actually, kind of to share a horror story, biotech has amazing benefits, like incredible benefits. They even have like adoption and IVF benefits and everything like that. And as women in engineering, those things are important because you do tend to wait a little bit longer. They also have paternity benefits, which is amazing because, again, women in engineering, your husband might need to take some time off. So when I was looking at it, I knew Novartis had great benefits, but when I switched jobs to my second company, I didn't think about it. And it turned out Milliken at the time, now legally they've had to instate it, did not have annuals or birth control as benefits for women. They would not cover it with their insurance. I found that out a year into working there. And so always ask. Never assume that a benefit is there. Albemarle Corporation was the first one that had full adoption benefits where they would pay for an attorney and a certain amount for every year that you were there. So it wasn't until I met with them and knew that that was a benefit that I even started asking other places if it's a benefit. And then vacation days, because you're going to work hard. It's just part of engineering, especially if you're in a startup. It's going to be a lot of long hours. So you want to know that they actually give you vacation days, and check the rollover. Check to see, like, do they disappear at the end of the year if you don't take them, or do they let any of it roll? And then I asked about 401k matching as well. And another thing to point out with that, just for all of you, is that if you end up getting a spouse in engineering, you are quickly going to reach a point where you cannot put it into your IRAs anymore. Literally, if two engineers marry, most of the time it's completely off the books because you're making too much. So make sure to put in while you're single as long as you can, and maximize how much you're putting in. And there is a set amount, I think it's like $5,500 you can do a year, but if you marry someone else in the field, you will lose that ability. So no one told me that, and when that went away, I was like, oh, I shouldn't have gotten married. What just happened? So just invest early, invest young, and keep everything in mind. But benefits, the pay. Glassdoor is a great place to look at the amounts, and then just try to talk to people that are either there. The career fairs are a really good place here, and then I know they used to have a speaker series, right, where the companies come in. The AICHE's got that, so they'll honestly answer you. Ask them what's the worst day on your job been like? What's the best day been like? What do you wish you had known before you went into your company? And most people are pretty honest. They're supposed to be there recruiting, but they also realize that if you come and you don't like it, that they just wasted all of that onboarding and training. Anyone else? Yes?
Could you say a little bit more about
Yeah.
thing with like getting married and?
Yeah, I think it's like, it's state by state dependent, I think, but there's like an amount, I think it was like 200,000. I think when you get, it's like over $200,000 combined income, you can't put into your IRA anymore. So there is a wiggle room with that, or a loophole. My third company had a kind of pension plan set up. So even though I got married during that, like I was still able to put into that, and then I was able to roll that over. So they had both the 401k with the matching and that. But like he at the time was not able to put in anymore. So it's just something to put into your IRA while you can, because once you get married. Yeah. And there's a max amount, and if you put it, if you are going to put it into your IRA and you know it, put it in at the beginning of the year, because then it makes money for you all year. Don't touch it. Don't, like, literally, just don't touch it. Put money in savings. Have a set amount that you, again, aren't going to miss because you're doing it from day one, that you put into savings and always put into savings, and have that auto draft so you never even see it. And like depend on that if something goes wrong. Don't pull out of your IRA and your 401ks unless you absolutely have to. Oh, and if you get puppies, get puppy insurance. It literally pays off itself the first time they get really sick, which they're going to do. If you have an old dog, they don't let you do it. You can't backdate. So things I wish I'd known. But that goes along with marriage, puppies, you know. Babies too, I think. Anything else? Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So like, let's say you do get in a place and like, oh wow, like really leave. Like you stay for like a year or two, and like or just leave right away and not put on your resume or something.
No. I mean, I've always given every location minimum 2 years, because at the start it can be a little rocky. But I'm also like, you can talk with your manager. Because one of the things that was said to me at Milliken that I really loved was, when you're hired for Milliken, you're not hired for that seat on the bus, you're hired for the whole bus. So there may be flexibility. And a lot of times what they'll do is they ask you what you like, and you can start finding out what skills are needed there, and you can start cross-training and doing some personal enrichment on the side to be able to get to where you need to get. So like if you ever apply for an advancement and you don't get it, look and see what skills held you out, and then talk with your manager about how you could potentially cross-train in a valuable way for them and for you that could make you more. But stick with it. I mean, a lot of people, they don't like things because they're not good at it at first, or they feel like they're failing. But there's so many opportunities within any company, and you definitely don't want to burn bridges, because again, that network is what makes or break you. Right now, the senior vice president for product development at Mattel was the vice president for product development at Rubbermaid when I took them from copolyesters to polypropylene. And he asked me to lunch 2 weeks ago. I thought I was going to maybe get to use the DC Girl line for my superhero science. Turns out he needs a material science engineer to help with a major launch that they're doing. So that network, if you don't burn those bridges and you keep them strong, always LinkedIn everyone. Don't Facebook them. Do not Facebook your coworkers. LinkedIn your coworkers. But that, he literally reached out to me on LinkedIn 5 years later to ask. So you never know where it could go. So just try to always kind of keep it strong. Yeah.
All right, our time is up. Let's thank
Thank you. And so the real strength